What's going on, everybody? It's Pete and Denise here with RE Solutions, and this week in Tidbit Thursday. First of all, I want to apologize because we're not in our normal videotaping place, or
Studio.
our little studio. Yeah, we have to do this from home because we were unable to get to our studio. But we didn't want to cancel today's Tidbit Thursday either because we have a special guest with us today. So Denise, me, Pompey, Belinda, we all started this Tidbit Thursday when we established RE Solutions in order to educate and help people in the home buying and selling process because there's a lot of individuals out there that really don't know um, that they can buy houses, either because they don't know the process or they're scared. I know that Denise and I, we didn't purchase our first home until we were 16 years into the military, 15 years married. And the only reason why was because we really didn't know and we were scared. We were scared about purchasing a home, even though, I was in the military and we were moving around quite a bit. We could have still bought a lot of homes and actually kept them as investment properties.
Yes, we could have
And
had
we
a
didn't.
lot more investment properties by now. But
And we just didn't know. So we made it our what's the word?
Purpose.
Yes, there you go. We made it our purpose to help individuals, to teach them what the process is so that they understand that it is not as scary as it may seem. And if you don't get into real estate, you're missing out on the probably the number one uh, investment uh, that you would ever make in your life, right? We work with a lot of military individuals right now, and there's quite a few of them that actually did that. What I was talking about before is purchase houses at different bases, and now they have investment properties that they're renting out, and they're setting themselves up for the future and stuff like that. So, when it comes to buying and selling a property, there are many people that are involved in that process, and it's like little cogs in the machine. Everybody's working together. It's not just a buyer and a seller and a real estate agent. Most of the times, obviously, there's going to be a mortgage lender or a bank. There's going to be appraisers and inspectors. But one of the most key individuals that are going to be in that process is a title company. And many individuals just don't know what a title company does. Today, we're going to learn that. So today we have a special guest. We have one of our long-term friends and escrow agent from Chicago Title. Her name is Miss Claudia Ramirez, and she is going to tell us a little bit about the title process and give us a little bit more in-depth information on some specific titles that she works with too. So, hi, Claudia.
Hi guys, how are y'all?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you for coming on, because I think a lot of people don't understand the title process, and all they know is that that's where they show up to sign papers.
Exactly.
Sell or get a house.
Yeah.
So
That's where I spend my last hour before I get my keys.
Yeah.
So first of all, Miss Claudia, again, thank you. And Claudia is one of the only escrow agent I use right now for my listings. I've known you for the whole time I've been in real estate, which is
10
almost
years.
8 years.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
10.
and so first of all, can you just explain like the overall, what is title?
Yeah, absolutely. The easy, in layman's terms, I always say, just like you want to get homeowners insurance on a house to protect the home, the outside of the shell of the home and the whatever's inside the home, title insurance is very similar to that, but for the land that the house sits on. So it's very important to check title for a property to make sure that your clients are protected in the future, that no one knocks at their door and says, hey, this is my house. That's the worst thing any new buyer, first time home buyer wants to hear, right? So what happens here at Chicago Title is when we receive a contract, we search whatever documents have been filed with the county that property is located in. We search to make sure the correct owner is in title. If there are any clouds in title, any mortgage liens, if you got a loan that creates a lien on the property, that's everything that we search for in depth to address and to clear up prior to closing so that the buyer receives a clear title.
So explain cloud again.
Cloud. It's not Claudia, it's a cloud in title. So a cloud in title could be anything from, like I said, a mortgage lien. So whenever you get a mortgage on a property, the house is being put up as collateral. So that mortgage company, that bank is going to want that money before they release that lien. That's one of the number one items that always comes up. There could be some judgments on a property that are filed. If there's a credit card that's not been paid, if a creditor filed a judgment with the county that the property is located in, that will create a cloud, and it'll have to be rectified prior to closing. There's just other types of clouds could be if the current owner didn't close at a title company previously and documents weren't filed correctly. So if there's one seller that didn't sign a deed into your new buyer or your current owner, we're going to have to go backwards and fix that, because that would create a cloud, because we have one seller that could come to us for a claim. So we always want to make sure the correct owners are in title. That can go into, we talked about this a little bit, Denise, when someone passes away, it can go into an estate. There's some power of attorneys that can be used at closing too for current owners. If there's an estate, there's several items that we ask questions about, but in reference to clouds in title, it can be anything from a mortgage lien, a creditor lien, or a previous owner that didn't convey to the new owner. Those are just a few.
Those are a few, yeah, I bet.
So I'm envisioning like a cloud, and you got to clear that cloud in order to get a house. There's a cloud over your house, and we need that cloud to go. Okay.
Yep, we need the sun to shine on it.
Yeah.
Denise is a visual person.
Yes, I am.
So
and you research all the way back to the soil, right? To the original, like to the beginning, correct?
Original owners. Yeah, if we have to, we will go back as far as the original owners. If we closed the company last year, we may not need to go back to the original owners, but if you have a seller that's owned a property for 50 years, yeah, we're going to go back very far into the records to research, but we are capable of going back that far.
Okay. I only asked that because I have a couple of contracts right now where, man, what they pulled up was interesting, like easements, like crazy, mineral rights. I was like, oh wow, this is, dating back to like 60s, 50s, and I'm like, whew. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. And so why should a person use a title company versus, say, go to a real estate lawyer? Oh, she frozen.
A title policy. We're here to issue a title policy that the potential we will not issue title insurance. Unless there are some companies in that would and we're also we act as a non-biased agent. So we're here to search the title. We're here to hold all the monies in escrow and make sure the appropriate parties get paid. So that would be the seller, that would be the real estate agents, that would be the lenders. So non-biased agent means that we don't take sides on who gets what. We have to go according to the contract.
So
Okay.
so we caught that second part where you are non-biased. So a lawyer would be biased. I guess we missed that first part.
Oh, sorry. Maybe we cut out. So an attorney, it's okay. So a real estate attorney typically represents one of the parties.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Right?
Perfect.
And unless each buyer and seller contract their own real estate attorney. But typically that real estate attorney is going to represent one of the parties and charge their specific fees as well. But again, they will not issue title insurance.
Gotcha. Yes.
Cool.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So, so today we are talking about probate. So, so that happens when somebody in your family passes away, and you inherit, or there's a property involved. Not necessarily that you inherited, but let's say, you know, you just never know.
Well, I'm
It could
pretty
be,
sure she can tell us some situations.
yeah. I mean, because usually
Mm-hmm.
it would be the children, but it could be a niece or whatever. So I know that the process is
Right.
usually a little more involved than if it's just seller of home with new buyer. And we just want to make a disclaimer that you are not a lawyer. So this is just a basic overview,
Okay,
and
not an attorney.
right. And we always, always, always recommend that if you have any further questions, that you go to an attorney for questions. Right. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So first of all, let's talk about what happens when a person dies without a will. What happens?
Okay, that's usually the most common I've been seeing lately. When an owner of and you own real estate, a property, when an owner passes away without a will, we have to determine the heirship. So that means I have to request, there's a questionnaire that I send out, and I have to request all this information from either the living spouse or the children, whoever is taking care of the estate. So it's still considered an estate. However, determining heirship would be telling me who was married to this person, if there were any previous marriages, with any and all of the marriages. I would have to get children information because that would be a potential heir for the property. So it's a 3-page document that I send to either the living spouse or the children, that they fill out, and gathering all of this information, it will allow me to prepare an affidavit of heirship, which would take the place of a will.
Okay. And so do you send that form to an attorney, and then they determine like who rightfully owns the property according to Texas probate law?
So the attorney doesn't determine who owns the property. The attorney prepares the legal document, and then my underwriter will then review all of the information that's been gathered, and then my underwriter, so the attorney for the title company, will determine who the heirs are and or the owner is that will need to sign off for this transaction.
Okay. So I know that you had written a little bit about this. So are there anything specific that people should know, like right off, general knowledge about when somebody dies without a will, what do they need to know before they even start planning to sell a home?
So the most important thing when you're sitting with a seller, or a seller is deciding to sell a property and there's a deceased person entitled without a will, the most important thing is that the heirs, typically if that person that is deceased was married at the time of death, the spouse typically gets 100% vested interest.
Mm-hmm.
But the questions have to be asked. We have to ask a lot of questions and be upfront, because if there are previous marriages, where there are children involved, that those children will also have interests with the current spouse. So that's something that has to be talked about upfront. If that person was married 10 years ago and has one child or two children, those children we will then, as a title company, merge the owners as 50-50 owners for that deceased person. So that can be triggering, that can be surprising for a lot of sellers that don't know that this happens. And that's why I say always get a will, or always have a will prepared.
Yes, because, and then if that person is divorced and there's a divorce decree, then you got to deal with a divorce decree, even if they got remarried and that person lived in the home. So all of that has to be considered, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So if there was a divorce previous to the death, then we'd look at those documents as well. We'd have to determine that the descendant, who is the person who passed, was awarded this property, and then that person got married again, and all of the T's need to be crossed, I's need to be dotted when someone's been divorced and when someone's passed away. So it's just a lot of questions that need to be asked up front, and giving them the knowledge of what's going to happen if there is no will that was probated.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So just begin with, all right. So as a listing agent, I would tell okay, just because if you don't have a will, we have to determine through a process who can actually sell this home, and just do it, and say, so we're going to gather some information. We're going to talk to a title company, because they're going to have to look to see legally who owns this home, right?
Correct.
Okay. So now, if a will exists, then it makes it so much easier, correct?
It does. Yes,
Yeah.
it does. So obviously, if there is a will, the will doesn't have to be probated. We could review that will and still go by those wishes in the will, but the affidavit of heirship would still need to be filed. That legal document would be filed, the affidavit, and then we'd attach the will to it. But we definitely would prefer the will to be probated. It makes everyone's lives easier. So then it would become an estate of the descendant. And that process typically takes, I would say, 30 to 60 days with the probate attorney. They admit the will to the probate court. Then there's a waiting period, and then they'll issue letters of testamentary. Some probate attorneys will even do an inventory on the inventory and appraisement on the property, which we would require as well. And then everything, all of that docket that's filed in the court, I would pull that once I'm ready to pull the title work. So we request copies of all those documents from the probate court. So the probate court and the courthouse, there's two separate parts of it where they file the probate documents and then regular filed documents.
Okay. Did you have a question?
I did have a question. So if a person comes and says that they have a power of attorney to sell the house or for the house, and there's no will, how does that work?
Well, number one, you can't use a power of attorney if the person who gave that power of attorney is deceased.
Right. Okay.
So that once that person who signed that power of attorney has passed away, that document is null and void.
Okay.
So we go back to step one of asking all the questions for the descendant and the affidavit of heirship questionnaire, unless they plan on probating the will.
So in that time that it takes to probate, legally, the house is still under the deceased owner's name, right?
Individual name. Mm-hmm.
Right. So what happens to, and you may not know this, but what happens to the house as far as like bills, mortgage, things of that nature, if that person is deceased?
So everything has to still be kept up with. Taxes still need to be paid. The mortgage still needs to get paid, because if it's not, I will have to collect for any penalties, assessments, everything. At the end of the day, it comes out in the wash. So I confirm that if taxes are delinquent, I would have to collect that delinquent amount. Same with the payoff. If they haven't made a payment since that person has passed away, we'd have to request whatever penalties are assessed for that. So I would strongly suggest to your clients to keep whoever's taking care of the estate to keep making those payments.
Because it's going to create a cloud on the house.
It will. Eventually, the tax office will file a lien if taxes aren't paid.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is a lot of individuals, one, with the power of attorney, they think because they have a power of attorney to the house that they can do anything they want with the house after the person has deceased.
Yeah.
Legally, that paperwork is, like you said, null and void. So it
really is
down to the will or no will. And then as far as keeping up with the house, unfortunately, somebody's going to have to keep up with the house while that person is deceased, because if not, it's going to be harder to actually do something with it later on, right? So a lot of people think that,
and to sell, correct?
Yeah, my parent died, so I don't have to pay the mortgage no more, or taxes or anything like that. Come to find out, once you pull title and you start telling them, well, you got to pay this and this and this, they're like, oh man, okay.
And so probating it,
so
probating it is great because everything you can, it's in the court, it's reported, it was recorded, so it just makes it cleaner, right? When they probate it.
It makes it, absolutely, it makes it cleaner, especially if you know, and if your seller knows that there are some siblings that aren't agreeing. You know, that probated will, I mean, they could obviously still contest that will, but if they don't contest it and it goes through the court and everything's filed, that makes it easier for it to sell, number one, and for whoever the executor or administrator is just to sign off as an executor or administrator.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's like levels here. Like this is the worst. This is the best. Okay. So I do. So like I have a listing appointment this weekend actually with 4 sisters, and who, you know, want to sell their parents' home, and they say they have a ladybird deed. What does that mean?
So there are certain deeds out there that will grant an owner 100% interest without having to probate, without having a will or an affidavit of heirship. There's a deed out there called a life estate deed, and then the ladybird deed is very similar. And again, I'm not a real estate attorney, so but the gist of those documents is it gives the grantee, whoever's granting that interest in the document, it gives that person 100% interest. So if I wanted to give you a ladybird deed, Denise, that just means upon my death, you would get 100% of the property.
Okay.
Or vested interest. So what we would request in that instance, when we see that kind of document filed, we would start asking questions. If this person is still alive, obviously we would need that person to sign off. But if that person is passed, we would just request a death certificate.
Okay. So then if that person passed, does it go back to the sisters?
It goes back to, it should go, if that person has passed away that granted that deed, it would go back to the people named in that deed as grantee. So if it's the 4 sisters, then they would be the legal owners of the property.
Okay. Ooh. So
we'll find out this week.
Yeah. So when I meet with them, should I ask them for what they have?
Yeah.
Should I just make a list of what they tell me, or should I just refer it to you and you start researching?
So I can pull a quick search on a property like I've done for you in the past. We need to make sure that document is filed, but I would ask them for a copy. It wouldn't hurt to get a copy, and then a copy of the death certificate also.
Okay. And then just like scan it and send it to you. What do I do with it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
send it to me, and then I can just review it and let you know if it's acceptable or not.
Yeah. So for other agents who may watch this, what they want to do is, if they know that it's a deceased person, go ahead and say, hey, just bring me what you have, make copies, and then that way I can give it to my title person, so they can start doing some research and start doing that, because before I list it on MLS, I know, my personality. I want to make sure that it's as painless as possible.
Right.
And I don't want to be in a situation where, now we really can't sell this property, but we're under contract with this buyer, So,
Yeah.
as a title person, what do you want us as realtors? What would you like to see us have done to make your life easier?
That's a great question. When you're listing a property and you're meeting with the sellers, especially if you know that there's a deceased person in title, the questions always to ask is, number one, was there a will? Was it probated? So if it was probated, we would just ask for the letters of testamentary up front. So that's one of the main things, because that gives me a short list of the information I need. If there was no will that was probated, then you would advise them that we would have to have an affidavit of heirship prepared. And for that, there's a questionnaire I can email to you, Denise, to get started. You can hand them to start working on. That's all the information we gather for the affidavit of heirship. So those are the three most important. Was there a will? Was it probated? If the answer to those two is no, then let them know about the affidavit of heirship that we would prepare. Okay. And then always, if there's someone deceased, always ask for a death certificate.
Okay. And then I will send that to you before I list. And then that way I can get a general idea of, yes, we could we can proceed, or hold on. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Okay.
Obviously, when you send me that information, I'm going to know that there's going to be, if there's letters of testamentary, that means that there's a will that's been probated. There's other searches that we do when we open title on a property. We also search the descendant's name. So we search every seller's name, and that's how we get creditor liens. So if that's a separate search also. So that's something else that we do along with the mortgage lien search. So there could possibly be something else that comes up on the title work that they wouldn't know of, but we would address it and help them fix it, obviously, once I know of that information.
Right. Yeah. You know me, I try to I don't want surprises, because if there's a difficult situation, I'm the one that has to explain it. So
exactly.
I try to be upfront from the beginning, and I will most likely tell them, this is going to take some time. This is not something that we can just throw on the market. We have to make sure that everything is good. And so we're going to go through a process before, get all of that out of the way. There may be more.
Exactly.
But,
right.
So.
And also, just touching on real quick, power of attorneys also, if you show up to a listing appointment and your seller hands you a power of attorney for their spouse or their mom or their dad, saying they're granting me the authority to help them sell this property, that doesn't make that person a seller. It just makes them a signer. So when someone hands you a power of attorney, we have to make sure that that person that's listed in that document is alive and well, and that they understand what's going on, because I will have to call them to ratify that document. So there's nothing fishy that can go on when there's a power of attorney.
That's another tidbit. That's going to be another tidbit Thursday. Can we call you in another quarter? because we have that situation right now, where Belinda's selling a property and it's it's messy. So
It can
yeah,
get that way.
yeah.
Yeah, but just
So
I think educating your agent and sellers in the very beginning of what's required with specific documents is the best way to go.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
All right.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
Trying to think. So going back to just, and you probably don't even know the answer to this, or you do, but you're going to say you're not a lawyer. But on the property management side, because you know I do property management. So if
Hmm.
somebody passed away and um, they supposedly don't have a will, uh, and they're going through probate or whatever, um, is that person able to put the house up for management before anything happens with the probate? Do you
So
know?
obviously we would want, I'm not an attorney, however, you would want to make sure that, especially in a management situation like that, that you're dealing with the correct owner or person that has the power to sell. So again, if they say there isn't a will, but they say it's going through probate, that means there's some kind of document going through the court. So we'd want to find out what document that is. And you could also reach out to me to do a quick title search, and I could check to see if there's anything that's been filed.
Okay.
Okay.
So
But just
basically,
make sure
they can't do anything until everything's done and in their name.
until
Well, they should.
exactly. They shouldn't. They
Right.
probably can, and they'll try to, but they probably should wait until documents are finished up at the courthouse.
Okay. And have you ever seen a situation that person is deceased and the airship doesn't want to do anything?
Hmm.
They just let the property go. What
I
happens then?
have. So once I confirm who the heirs are, we tell them this is how it's set up. I need 5 people to sign off in order to close and insure this transaction. And if they don't, if 1 out of the 5 don't agree, I can't move forward. So they, especially with the proceeds split. I'm sorry.
No,
Nothing.
no.
So especially with the money, with the proceeds, if you have 1 out of the 5 sellers, this is just an example, that says I don't agree to that money, then I'm at a standstill. I can't help them come to an agreement. They have to come to an agreement on their own or get a real estate attorney.
Okay, cool. That's good. Any other questions?
That's it. This is a good one. This is
Yeah,
a good one.
I know. You have any
Thank
other
you, guys.
information you want to give out?
Bring me your closings, Claudia Ramirez, Chicago title, 1604 and I-10.
There you go. I put your information up there.
Mhm.
Hey, so
Thank
Claudia,
you, Pete and Denise.
Thank you for being with us today. Yeah, hopefully we can do this again. Talking about some other stuff with title, because there's a lot of information
Yes.
when it comes to
So much.
Yes.
yeah, and we would love to try to do this on. We have another podcast, which not podcast, little blog that we do is a PM Talker. But this is specifically for EXP agents.
Okay.
So we'd like to try to schedule you to come on there and talk to some of the agents and
I
stuff like
apologize
that.
about that. That was my phone.
Phone's always ringing. Oh. So, but yeah, we would love to.
Yeah, let me know when. I'll be able to join.
Awesome, awesome.
Thanks,
Well,
Claudia.
thanks again. And the person's calling again. So Denise doesn't know how to mute it. So anyway, all right, Claudia, thank you.
Thank you,
And we
Claudia.
will see you later on. I guess Denise will be sending you some information about these 4 sisters on Saturday.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
let me
meeting with
know.
them, so I'll get that affidavit of heirship from you so I can bring it on Saturday for my appointment.
All
Okay,
right.
sounds good.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Claudia.
guys.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So that was Claudia Ramirez with Chicago title.
Chicago.
It
was good.
Yeah,
It was
a lot of good
one.
information.
Yeah.
I know that there was some areas I think that were cut off, just internet stuff. But
But we got the gist of it because
Yeah.
we wrapped around.
Yeah. So anyway, this one's a little bit long. I understand. Sorry, but there was a lot of good information
was
put
good
out there.
info, yeah.
So I hope that you have a great day, and we will see you next week. All right.
Bye.